In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate the concept of Python sets and dictionaries and how they're actually used within our program. Okay, so let's jump right in. I'm going to begin by creating, let's say, a simple set here. So just do a little comment here first. So create a set, and let's see, just do some items equals, of course, my curly braces for my set, and let's do an arrow, for example, and then I'm going to have just some random items here, spear, and then maybe repeat the arrow again. Let's do it again one more time, for example, and then finally let's do another one. Let's say rock. So here are my items list. Next, if I just do a simple print, just so that you can see, just do a comment here quick so it's easier to follow sometimes. So I'm just going to print the set next, and here I'm going to say print items. Okay, and of course I need to save this first. I'm going to call it my set py, save it, and notice, of course, if I save it, the color coding shows up. And let's run it, see what happens, and I'll simply get the same results again. Of course, the duplicates are removed. I have, for example, the word arrow 3 times within this particular set called items here, but when I run it, when I print the set, it only prints it once. If I need to find out the length of the items, for example, so I can say something like print len and then my items, run it again, and notice in this instance shows me that it's 3. I can also use the in keyword within my sets that I've just created. So if I were to do something like if, let's say, rock in items, and then just do a print. Just some quick demonstration here. Something like cloak not found. Of course, I'm not passing anything at this point. Okay, so let's save it, run it, and notice I get a output as cloak not found, because the simple if within the items set, there's an item called rock, and it finds it, so therefore it displays a message. Now I can also create an empty set, for example. Okay, so if I were to do something like create an empty set, just putting a comment here, and then let's do items equals set, and then I'm going to add items. Basically, I'm just going to add a few more strings to this set. So what am I going to add? I'm going to add items and then use a method, and then let's say cat, and do the same things. And this time I'm going to add, say, my dog, and then maybe one more item. Items.add, and I'm going to add, let's say, a fish. And once I'm done, simply do a print items, run it, and notice in this instance Python is going to give me the output by saying cat, dog, and fish. So we can create an empty set, and we can simply add items. Similarly, we can remove, delete, and so on. Let me show you one quick example, a small program that we're going to write for, scroll down here so you can see. All right, I'm going to have, let's say, 2 sets here. Okay, so I'm going to create, I'm going to call it what, numbers 1 is our first one, and within this I'm going to have, let's say, 1, 3, 5, and 7, and then I'm going to have my numbers 2, and in this set I'm just going to place 1 and 3, just the 2 prime numbers. And with Python sets, since we work on a mathematical concept such as union or intersection, where we're combining numbers or we're taking the common numbers between these 2 sets. So for example, in sets numbers 1, I have 1, 3, 5, 7, and numbers 2 contain 1 and 3. So obviously if I were to do the intersection or the common between these 2 sets, I'll see that the 1 is common and the number 3 is common. So let's take a look at how Python works with the concept of unions and intersections. So for instance, if I need to find the subset first, I would do like if numbers 2 and use a method called is subset. I think it's 2 S's, is subset, and then do numbers 1. Let's see the output. So print is a subset. Let's run it. Great. So the output is a subset. Similarly, if I were to do another if here, for example, to find the superset, so I can say something like if numbers 1 is superset number, spelling's right, numbers 2 colon, and this time if I were to print is a superset, see what happens, run it. Okay, numbers, so I gotta get my spellings correct here somewhere. There we go. Here we go, numbers 1. Let's run it one more time, and this time Python displays the output and says is a superset. And quickly let me demonstrate the concept of intersection as well. So it'll be, well, I don't have to do if again, I can just do a print because I have these already above. So I can say print, and I want to do numbers 1 dot intersection numbers 2. That's all I have to do. Run it, and this time the intersection is 1 and 3. Okay, because notice up here within my two numbers 1 and 2, as I mentioned earlier, the common or the intersection between these two is the number 1 and number 3, and that's what I get in my output. Okay, so just a quick concept of sets. Let's take a look at how we can use these sets and apply them within the concept of dictionaries. Okay, and how dictionaries help us associate values. So let me go ahead and in fact get rid of all of this. You can always refer back to this. So here I'm going to move to the concept of dictionaries and how to use them. So for instance, let me put a comment here so we can remember before I start coding. So let's say I create a mapping of various states to their abbreviations. Okay, so here's the concept of the program that we're about to create. So we're going to create mappings of various states. So for example, the state Illinois, and we'll map it to, let's say, Chicago, their city. We have to remember that mapping or associating is the key concept when you're working with dictionaries. So if you're in California, for example, is the state, you need to map it to CA, and that has to be in capitals, right? So this is the objective of creating the dictionary and then mapping them, and then obviously flowing from the concept of sets that we worked upon earlier. So let's begin. Let's do our states here, equals, open my curly braces, and let's do a list. For example, just some states that I'm going to write here. So I'm going to say something like, let's say Oregon, and define as OR. Here, forgot my quotation. Perfect. Okay. All right. Next state, I'm going to use Florida. Just some random states here. Okay. And next one is California, and maybe a couple of more. Okay. Let's say New York. Building the list here, and let's do one more. Let's say Michigan, and make sure I have my commas here. All right, great. All right, next I'm gonna, let me put a comment here so we can see. So create a basic set of states, and some cities in them. Okay. All right, let's get some cities going here. So I'm going to say cities equals curly braces, and I'm going to say California or CA, and here I'm going to say San Francisco. Next would be, let's say, MI for Michigan, and I'm going to say Detroit, and maybe just do another couple of them. Florida, and a city in Florida would be say Jacksonville. I can always add more cities if need be, and of course instead of going back to adding more cities, I can always, let's say, add more cities. For example, I can do a simple list here. So I can do something like cities, and I want to add, let's say, New York, and simply make sure that equals New York. Similarly, let's add one more. I'm going to say something like Oregon, and this is going to be Portland. So once I'm done creating my dictionary and of course adding additional cities, I can then do a print, right? So I'm going to do the print out these cities, and let's test it out. So I'm going to do print parentheses, and let's say I'm going to do a times, let's say 10, and see what happens. Let me save it, run it, and notice at this point it doesn't display anything. In fact, just gives me the printout of 10 dashes, because that's what I asked Python to do at this point. Next, let's print out some more outputs so we can actually see. So here I'm going to say print New York state has, let's say, cities with the abbreviation of NY. Okay, let's see whether we get the output. And yes, indeed, we get New York state has, and it says New York. So it successfully maps the NY state abbreviation with the actual name of the state, which is New York. Let's test it out with another one. So let's do print. Let's do OR state has, and this time I can say cities and then find the OR, close my parentheses, save it. All right, let's see where we did wrong. We don't need a parentheses here because we're duplicating these parentheses, so fix this. Now run it again, and this time OR state has Portland as one of the cities. Okay, so this is a good way of mapping while you're creating a dictionary. Similarly, I can also go ahead and print some states. Okay, so for example, let's say a comment here, print some states, and here let's do a print and just do let's say times 10 again. All right, what are we printing? We're printing, let's say, Michigan. Let's start with Michigan first, or say Michigan's abbreviation is states, and then say Michigan. Let's run it, and in this instance it's going to map the state of Michigan to MI. Same thing, I can do it with any other state, for example. So let me just copy it and paste it, and instead of Michigan I can say Florida. Florida's abbreviation states is Florida. Okay, so save and run it, and this instance I'm going to get the abbreviation of FL for Florida. If I want to print every state, for example, right, so instead of just typing each state number differently, if I'd like to, let's say, print every state, so I'm just going to go ahead and do my times 10 to be consistent, and then I'm just going to do a for abbreviation, comma, and I'm going to say city in cities dot items, and then of course I need my print. So I'm going to use print and use my modulo has the city. All right, this is going to be modulos as the city, and then of course finish it off, do another modulo and abbrev and then city. Okay, let's save it, run it, and this time notice I get a complete list, right? So I get MI has the city Detroit, NY has the city New York, FL has the city Jacksonville, and so on. Okay, so I could do the entire list. Now I could do something like both at the same time, right? So for instance, just the city and the state together. Okay, so let's go ahead and let me do this quickly. So let's say I'm just going to copy it. Okay, so it's easier. I don't have to type the code again. First, I'm going to just do the print here, and next I'm going to do for state, my abbreviation, in state, use my method items, and then do a print. Bring up my modulo. State is abbreviated %s and has city, right? So I'm combining both the state and the city together. And then right after my quotations, do another modulo and do again state, comma, abbreviation, and this time I'm going to use cities and just bring up the list. All right, great. Save it, run it. All right, state is not defined because it's actually states, not state. So just do s, fix it, run it, and fix these. Perfect. All I did was, of course, I used state instead of states, so misspelled all of the states. Okay. So once you fixed it, notice the output is Michigan State is abbreviated MI and has city Detroit. Okay, Oregon State is abbreviated OR and has city Portland. So this way we can in fact create powerful set of dictionaries in Python and then have them associate, for example, such as states to their abbreviations. Other examples would be animals to their breeds, currency symbols to different countries, and so on. So I hope this helps. Practice working with Python sets and dictionaries, and let's move to our next lesson.